I told him my dream with a sparkle in my eye, and he laughed so hard he literally choked on his expensive scotch. "You're serious?" he gasped, wiping a tear from his eye. "Eliza, you running a consulting agency? That's the funniest thing I've heard all week." I stopped smiling. I didn't defend myself. I didn't say another word. I just waited for him to go upstairs, listened until his heavy snoring echoed down the hallway, opened my laptop in the pitch black of our living room, and typed the very first line of my business plan. For 14 years, I was the woman behind the curtain. I was the one who worked 60 hours a week as a mid-level corporate marketing director so my husband Julian could play the role of the visionary entrepreneur. When we met, I was 28 and he was 30. He had big ideas and empty pockets. I loved his ambition. I thought we were a team. So I paid the mortgage on our first tiny apartment. I paid for his networking dinners. I proofread his pitch decks at 2 in the morning. When his first 2 startups spectacularly failed, leaving us drowning in $65,000 of debt, I was the one who skipped lunches and sold my grandmother's vintage jewelry to keep us afloat. Eventually, his third company, a boutique software firm, took off. We moved into a gorgeous 4-bedroom house in the Seattle suburbs. He started wearing custom suits. He traded his beat-up sedan for a sleek black Porsche. And somewhere along the way, I stopped being his partner and became part of the scenery. I was just the reliable, boring wife who managed the household, handled the taxes, and made sure his dry cleaning was picked up every Thursday. I was 42 years old, completely exhausted, and fundamentally hollow. I had spent over a decade pouring every ounce of my energy into building his empire, and I had absolutely nothing of my own. That night in the living room, when I told him I wanted to take my years of marketing experience and start my own specialized agency, his laughter didn't just hurt, it flipped a switch in my brain. It was the sound of a man who looked at me and saw absolutely zero value. So, I started building my company in the shadows. I woke up at 4 in the morning to draft proposals. I took client calls from my car during my lunch breaks at my corporate job. I funded the startup costs entirely from my own end-of-year bonuses, making sure not a single dime came from our joint accounts. I was terrified, but for the first time in a decade, I felt alive. 6 months into my secret venture, my agency was finally gaining traction. I needed to pull some old tax documents to set up my new LLC properly, so I went into Julian's home office to use his desktop computer. He was away on a critical business trip in Miami, supposedly schmoozing venture capitalists. I opened his files, looking for our 1040 forms from the previous year. But Julian was never as smart with technology as he thought he was. He had left his personal email account logged in, and a new message popped up in the corner of the screen. The subject line read, "Invoice for studio build-out." I frowned. Julian's software company had nothing to do with studio build-outs. My heart doing a strange, heavy flutter in my chest, I clicked on the email. It was a bill from a commercial contractor for $42,500. The billing address was a retail space downtown. The name on the invoice wasn't Julian's company. It was Luminous Flow Pilates, LLC. My hands began to shake. I opened the search bar in his inbox and typed the word luminous. Dozens of emails populated, hundreds. I clicked on the first thread. It was an email exchange between Julian and a woman named Savannah. "Baby," Julian had written on a Tuesday at 2 p.m. while I was sitting in a soul-crushing corporate meeting. The wire transfer went through, $85,000 from the secondary savings account. "You're going to have the most beautiful Pilates studio in the city. Don't worry about Eliza. She never looks at that account. She's too busy playing house. I can't wait to celebrate with you tonight at the W Hotel. I sat in his leather office chair, staring at the screen until the words blurred. Savannah. I did a quick search on social media. It didn't take a private investigator to find her. Savannah was 26 years old. She had long, perfect blonde hair, an obsession with matching athletic wear, and a newly minted LLC. I scrolled through her public Instagram feed. There were pictures of her holding a glass of champagne in first class on a flight to Miami, the exact same days Julian was on his business trip. There was a picture of her wearing a stunning diamond tennis bracelet. The caption read, "Spoiled by my favorite investor." I felt physically sick. I ran to the bathroom and threw up my morning coffee. The betrayal was so deep, so multi-layered, it felt like I was suffocating. He hadn't just cheated on me. He had taken $85,000 of our marital assets, money I had helped save, money from the company I helped build from the ground up, and handed it to a 26-year-old girl to fund her dream. Just months prior, he had laughed in my face when I wanted to start a business. He made me feel small, ridiculous, and delusional. Yet, he was secretly playing the wealthy benefactor for his mistress's vanity project. I sat on the cold bathroom tiles for almost an hour. I cried until my eyes were swollen and my throat was raw. I grieved the marriage I thought I had. I grieved the 14 years I had given to a man who viewed me as nothing more than an ATM and a housekeeper. And then the tears stopped. A cold, absolute clarity washed over me. I stood up, splashed freezing water on my face, and looked at myself in the mirror. I wasn't the pathetic, oblivious wife he thought I was. I was the woman who had pulled him out of $65,000 in debt. I was the architect of his success, and I was going to be the architect of his destruction. I didn't call him. I didn't scream. I didn't send a frantic text message demanding answers. If I confronted him then, he would just move the money, delete the emails, and gaslight me into oblivion. Instead, I went back to his computer. I spent 4 hours taking screenshots of every single email, every flight confirmation, every hotel receipt, and every bank transfer. I forwarded the evidence to a secure, hidden email address I created that day. I dug into our joint banking portal and traced exactly how he was moving the money. He had been siphoning funds from our high-yield savings account into a shell account, then wiring it to Savannah. The next morning, I called a woman named Victoria. She was notoriously known in Seattle as the most ruthless divorce attorney money could buy. When I sat in her high-rise office and laid a 3-inch thick binder of printed emails and bank statements on her mahogany desk, she looked at the evidence, took off her reading glasses, and smiled a slow, predatory smile. "Eliza," Victoria said, "he has committed marital waste on a spectacular level. We are going to take him to the absolute cleaners, but you need to be patient. Can you play the loving wife for another 6 months?" "I've been playing a role for 14 years, I told her, my voice dead calm. 6 more months is nothing. And so began the greatest performance of my life. When Julian came back from Miami, I greeted him at the door with a kiss and a hot dinner. When he complained about how exhausting his meetings were, I rubbed his shoulders and told him how proud I was of his hard work. Every Thursday, when he said he was working late to finalize a software rollout, I knew he was at Savannah's apartment. I would kiss him goodbye, tell him to drive safe, and then immediately log onto my computer to build my empire. I used my anger as fuel. Every time he lied to my face, I pitched a new client. Every time he bought Savannah a gift with our money, I optimized my website. My marketing agency, which I named Apex Consulting, exploded. Within 5 months, I had secured 3 massive corporate contracts. My side hustle was suddenly generating more revenue in a month than my corporate job did in a year. I quietly quit my day job, structuring my new income through a complex legal trust Victoria helped me set up, completely shielding it from Julian's reach in the impending divorce. But the most sickening part of those 6 months wasn't Julian, it was his mother, Beatrice. Beatrice had always been cold to me, but she suddenly started dropping by our house unannounced. One afternoon, while I was making tea in the kitchen, her phone buzzed on the counter. The screen lit up with a text message. It was from Julian. "Make sure you get Savannah's birthday gift from the boutique on Fifth Ave. The receipt is under my name." I stared at the glowing screen. His mother knew. She had known this whole time. She was running errands for his mistress. The betrayal compounded, a bitter, toxic pill that I swallowed down with a smile when Beatrice walked back into the room. I handed her her Earl Grey tea and asked her how her day was. By our 15th wedding anniversary, the trap was fully set. Victoria had completed a forensic accounting of all of Julian's assets. We had documented exactly $142,000 of marital funds spent on Savannah, between the business funding, the Miami trips, and the jewelry. Julian, ever the showman, insisted on taking me to Le Gourmand, the most expensive French restaurant in the city, for our anniversary dinner. He wore his custom navy suit. He ordered a $300 bottle of Bordeaux. He held my hand across the white tablecloth and looked deeply into my eyes. 15 years, Eliza, he said, his voice dripping with practiced sincerity. You are my rock. I couldn't have built any of this without you. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. He slid it across the table. I opened it. Inside was a delicate, entirely underwhelming pair of pearl earrings. They probably cost him $200. I thought about the diamond tennis bracelet sitting on Savannah's wrist. I smiled, closing the box. Thank you, Julian. They're lovely, but I actually have a gift for you, too. I reached into my designer handbag, paid for with my own agency's money, and pulled out a thick, heavy manila envelope. I placed it perfectly in the center of the table, right next to the Bordeaux. Go ahead, I said softly. Open it. Julian chuckled, looking confused. He unclasped the envelope and pulled out the stack of documents. The first page was a blown-up, high-resolution photograph of him and Savannah kissing on a yacht in Miami. The blood drained from his face so fast he looked like a ghost. His jaw physically dropped. He flipped to the second page. It was the $42,500 invoice for Luminous Flow Pilates. The third page was the forensic accounting report, detailing every single stolen dollar, highlighted in bright, unforgiving yellow. The final document was the petition for divorce, already filed with the county court. Eliza, he stammered, his eyes darting frantically around the elegant, quiet restaurant. Eliza, what is this? I can explain. She's just an investment, a consultant. You're acting crazy. You're completely misunderstanding this. Am I? I leaned forward, my voice dropping to a terrifyingly calm whisper. Did you invest your tongue in her mouth on that yacht, Julian? Because that seems like a highly unconventional business strategy. Keep your voice down, he hissed, his panic morphing into anger. You don't know what you're doing. If you walk away from me, you'll have nothing. You don't know how to survive without my money. I let out a genuine, joyful laugh. It was the best I had felt in 14 years. Your money? I asked, tilting my head. Julian, you are going to be paying me back every single dime of the $142,000 you stole from our marital estate. Victoria has already filed the injunctions. Your accounts are frozen as of 5 p.m. today. You can't even pay for this dinner with your corporate card. His eyes widened in sheer terror. He reached for his phone, frantically swiping to open his banking app. I watched the realization wash over him as he saw the bright red account locked notifications. "And you want to know the worst part, Julian?" I asked, standing up from the table and smoothing my skirt. "While you were playing sugar daddy and laughing at my dreams, I built a marketing agency. We just crossed $2 million in projected annual revenue. And because of the postnuptial clauses and the evidence of your extreme financial infidelity, you aren't entitled to a single penny of it." I dropped a $50 bill on the table for the valet. "Happy anniversary," I said, looking down at the man who had stolen my youth. "Have Savannah come pick you up. I'm keeping the house." The divorce was a bloodbath, but I didn't shed a single tear. Julian tried to fight, but Victoria dismantled him in mediation. The judge was so appalled by his blatant funneling of funds that the rulings were incredibly one-sided. I got the house in Seattle. I got my original investments back, plus a massive chunk of his company's equity as compensation for the marital waste. Without access to Julian's endless stream of stolen cash, Savannah's Pilates studio went under within 8 months. She left him for a real estate developer in Scottsdale shortly after. Julian's software company took a massive hit during the legal proceedings, and he was forced to downsize, trading his Porsche back in for a sensible sedan. As for Beatrice, his mother, I packed up all the cheap, passive-aggressive gifts she had given me over the years and had them delivered to her front door with a note that simply said, "Ask your son." I am now 44 years old. I am sitting in the corner office of my own 7-figure agency. The view of the Seattle skyline from my window is breathtaking. I am surrounded by a team of brilliant women, making my own money, living on my own terms. He laughed at my dream because he wanted to keep me small, but the only thing his laughter did was wake me up, and waking up was the most expensive mistake he ever made.